blood of the Lamb. Re 7. 1, 9-17 As a class, they will not need to be resurrected, but faithful ones of that group who die before the Great Tribulation will be resurrected in God's due time. Also, there are many unrighteous persons buried in Sheol Hades, mankind's common grave, or in the sea, watery graves. The judgment of these along with the righteous resurrected on earth is described in Revelation 20. 12, 13. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and scrolls were opened. But another scroll was opened. It is the scroll of life. And the dead were judged out of those things written in the scrolls according to their deeds. And the sea gave up those dead in it, and death and Hades gave up those of the Levitical services. Son of Yaazia. 1 Ch 24. 27, 31. Shomer from a root that means guard. 1. A descendant of Asher, whose 4 sons were chieftains and family heads. His name is also spelled Shema. 1 Ch 7. 30, 32, 34, 40. 2. Jehozabad, one of the assassins of Judah's king Jehoash, is identified as a son of both Shomer and Shimrith the Moabitess. 2 Chi 12. 21. 2 Ch 24. 26 Shomer is a masculine word in Hebrew. Shimrith is feminine. Some view Shomer as the father of Jehozabad and Shimrith as his mother. However, Shomer may have been the father of Shimrith. If this is the case, Jehozabad was the grandson of Shomer, the term son often meaning descendant. Shofak. Alternate form of the name Shobak. 1 Ch 19. 16, 18. See Shobak. Shoulder. The part of the body of man or beast that protrudes to the sides below the neck. By extension, a rounded or sloping part of a hill. Also capacity for bearing burdens or responsibility. Anciently, as today, it was customary to carry loads on the shoulders. GE 21. 14. X 12. 34 The Ark of the Covenant was to be carried, not on a wagon, but on the shoulders of Levites. 1 Ch 15. 15. Jos 3. 14, 15. 2 6. 3, 6-9, 13 A heavy load on the shoulders could denote oppression or slavery. PS 81. 5, 6. Issa 10. 27. 14. 25. Mount 23. For the tribe of Issachar was foretold to bend down his shoulder to bear burdens. GE 49. 14, 15 In Israel's history this tribe was willing to take responsibility and do hard work. It supplied many courageous fighters for Judge Barak and, later, provided Judge Tola. Also, in the time of David, this tribe furnished many wise and valiant men. JG 5. 13, 15. 10. 1, 2. 1 Ch 7. 1-5. 12. 23, 32. An authority or responsibility was said to rest on one's shoulder. Isaiah's prophecy foretold Otextoi acute miritra longo, shovel 936 garments, evidently picturing certain authorities that would depend on or rest upon the shoulders of the great Tukai 19. 35, and we would not expect to find in his boastful records an account of this overwhelming setback. Notable archaeological confirmation of the last statement in the books of Kings has been found in cuneiform tablets excavated at Babylon. These indicate that Jehoiachin was imprisoned in Babylon and mentioned that he was provided with rations from the royal treasury. 2 Chi 25. 30. Ancient Near Eastern Texts, p. 308. Fulfillments of prophecy. The books of Kings contain various prophecies and point to striking fulfillments. For example, 1 Kings 2. 27 shows the fulfillment of Jehovah's word against the house of Eli. 1 Sa 2. 31-36. 3. 11-14 prophecies regarding Ahab and his house were fulfilled. Compare 1 Car 21. 19-21 with 1 Car 22. 38 and 2 Chi 10. 17. What was foretold concerning Jezebel and her remains came true. Compare 1 Car 21. 23 with 2 Car 9. 30-36. And the facts of history confirm the veracity of the prophesied destruction of Jerusalem. 2 Car 21. 13. Among the many points highlighted in the books of Kings is the importance of adherence to Jehovah's requirements and the dire consequences of ignoring his just laws. The two books of Kings forcefully verify the predicted consequences of both obedience and disobedience to Jehovah God. King's Road. The road from which the Israelites promised not to depart if allowed to pass through Edomite territory and the Amorite realm of King Sihon. New 20. 17. 21. 21, 22. 2. 26, 27. This road must have extended from the Gulf of Aqaba at least as far as the Jabbok, the apparent end boundary of Sihon's territory, and many believed that it ran as far as Damascus and generally corresponded to the paved Roman highway built by Emperor Trajan in the 2nd century CE with the exceptions of needed adjustments for modern traffic. The present-day road called Tariq es-Sultanah closely follows the ancient Roman highway, portions of which still exist. Apparently the northern portion of this road from Heshbon to Ashtaroth was called the Way of Bashan. New 21. 33. 3. 1. Kinsman. Sikin, kinsman. Kir. The place from which the Arameans came to Syria, although not necessarily their original home. Am 9. 7 through his prophet Amos 1. 5. Jehovah indicated that the Arameans would return to Kir, but as exiles. This prophecy was fulfilled when Tiglath-Pileser III, after being bribed by Judean king ample treasures in the time of Ezra, 468 BCE is rate. 33, 34. Phlegon Phlegon burning. One of the Roman Christians whom Paul greets in his letter. Row 16. 14. Phoebe Phoebe pure. Bright. Radiant. A Christian sister of the 1st century congregation in Cenchreae. Paul, in his letter to the Christians at Rome, recommends this sister to them and calls on them to render her any needed assistance as one who proved to be a defender of many, yes, of me myself. Row 16. 1, 2. It may be that Phoebe delivered Paul's letter in Rome or else accompanied the one who did. Paul refers to Phoebe as a minister of the congregation that is in Cenchreae. This raises the question as to the sense in which the term diakonos minister is here used. Some translators view the term in an official sense and hence render it deaconess rs, JB. But the scriptures make no provision for female ministerial servants. Goodspeed's translation views the term in a general sense and translates it helper. However, Paul's reference is evidently to something having to do with the spreading of the good news, the Christian ministry, and he was speaking of Phoebe as a female minister who was associated with the congregation in Cenchreae. Compare 2. 17, 18. Phoebe served as a defender of many. The term translated defender _station has the basic sense of protectress or succorer, so that it implies not mere cordiality but a coming to the aid of others who are in need. It may also be rendered patroness. Phoebe's freedom to travel and to render notable service in the congregation may indicate that she was a widow and possibly a woman of some material wealth. So, she may have been in position to use influence in the community in behalf of Christians who were being wrongly accused, defending them in this way. Or she may have provided refuge for them in time of danger, serving as a protectress. The record gives no details. Phoenicia fo middle.nicia likely from a root meaning palm tree. That strip of coastland along the eastern shore of the Mediterranean between Syria and Israel that was bounded on the east by the Lebanon mountains. It roughly corresponded to the modern country of Lebanon. For many years the principal city of ancient Phoenicia was Sidon, but later it was eclipsed in importance by Tyre, a city founded by a colony from Sidon. See Sidon, Sidonians. Tyre. Geographic features. The coastal plains of this long, O-textoi acute Muritra longo, Phoenix 636, however, in time the Greeks preferred to call these Canaanite Sidonians by yet another term, Phoenicians. So it was that Canaanite, Sidonian, and Phoenician were names sometimes used interchangeably for the same people. In Isaiah's prophecy, for example, Phoenicia is termed Canaan. 2-16. Jesus' knowledge was enhanced by his having had an intimate relationship with his Father and God before coming to the earth. Therefore he knew God as no other man did, and this enabled him to provide authoritative teaching concerning his Father. As Jesus himself said, "No one fully knows the Son but the Father, neither does anyone fully know the Father but the Son and anyone to whom the Son is willing to reveal him." Mount 11. 27. Joe 1. 18. Jesus was also thoroughly acquainted with God's written word. When asked which commandment was the greatest in the law, without hesitation he summed up the entire law in 2 commandments, quoting from Deuteronomy 6. O textoi acute miritra longo, teacher, teaching 1072. Discernment was enhanced by miraculous knowledge of the background and reasoning of others. Mount 12. 25. Lu 6. 8. Joe 1. 48. 4. 18. 6. 61, 64. 13. 11. He himself knew what was in man. Joe 2. 25. His heart went out to the people to such an extent that he sacrificed needed rest to teach them. On one occasion Jesus and his disciples took a boat and headed for an isolated spot to rest up a bit. But people saw them going, and many got to know it, and from all the cities they ran there together on foot and got ahead of them. Well, on getting out, he saw a great crowd, but he was moved with pity for them, because they were as sheep without a shepherd. And he started to teach them many things. Mr. 6. 31-34. Jesus treated his listeners with understanding. When his disciples did not get the point of an illustration, he patiently explained it to them. Mount 13. 10-23. Aware of their limitations, he did not give them too much information. Joe 16. 4, 12. When needed, Jesus repeated practically identical information. Mr. 9. 35. 10. 43, 44. In answering questions, Jesus often fortified his reply by means of illustrations or object lessons, thereby leaving a deep impression on the minds of the listeners and stirring up their thinking faculties. Mount 18. 1-5, 21-35. Lu 10. 29-37. God's Spirit teaches. During the 3.5 years of his earthly ministry, Jesus trained his apostles to continue the work he had started. As imperfect humans, they could not possibly remember every detail of his teaching. But Jesus promised them, "The Helper, the Holy Spirit, which the Father will send in my name, that one will teach you all things and bring back to your minds all the things I told you." Joe 14. Aisha, a distance of perhaps 50 kilometers 30 mi, and offered him a most generous gift, which the prophet insistently refused. Naaman then asked for some of the earth of Israel, the load of a pair of mules, to take home, that upon Israel's soil he might offer sacrifices to Jehovah, vowing that from then on he would worship no other god. Perhaps Naaman had in mind offering sacrifices to Jehovah upon an altar of ground. 2 Kai 5. 15-17. Compare X 20. 24, 25. Naaman next requested that Jehovah forgive him when, in the performance of his civil duties, he bowed before the god Rimmon with the king, who evidently was old and infirm and leaned for support upon Naaman. If such was the case, then his bowing would be mechanical, being solely for the purpose of dutifully supporting the king's body and not in personal worship. Elisha believed Naaman's sincere request, replying, "Go in peace." 2 Kai 5. 18, 19. After leaving, Naaman was overtaken by Elisha's covetous servant Gehazi, who lyingly made it appear that Elisha had changed his mind and would, after all, accept some gifts. Naaman gladly granted him gifts of silver and garments. But for this greedy and lying act in which he tried, by misusing his office as Elisha's attendant, to profit from the work of Jehovah's Spirit, Jehovah punished him by otextoi acute miritra longo, Nabonidus 457 Nara middle. Ra. 1. Girl. Young woman. a wife of the Judean Asher by whom he had 4 sons. 1ch4. 1, 5, 6. 2. From the root meaning shake off. A city on the boundary of Ephraim. Jos 16. 5, 7 thought to be the same as Naaran. 1ch7. 28 Naara is generally considered to correspond to the no middle dot do middle dot wrath of Oisbis onomastic in 136, 24. Josephus seemingly calls this site Nara. He relates that half of its waters were diverted to irrigate the palms near Archelaus Palace at Jericho. Jewish Antiquities, 17, 340-13, 1. It has tentatively been identified with Tel El Jissa, about 3 kilometers to me and W of Jericho. Nara middle dot dry, possibly a shortened form of Neariah, meaning boy young man of Jah, son of Ezbah and a mighty man in David's military forces. 1ch11. 26, 37 He may be identical with Pararai the Arbit mentioned at 2 Samuel 23. 35, in what seems to be a parallel list. Nara middle dot and from a root meaning shake off. An Ephraimic border city. 1ch7. 20, 28, apparently the same as Naara. Jos 16. 5, 7. See Naara no. 2. 19. 11. 1-4. For a time Hobom walked quite closely to the laws of Jehovah, and early in his reign he built and fortified a number of cities, some of which he stocked with food supplies. 2ch11. 5-12, 17 However, when his kingship was firmly established he abandoned Jehovah's worship and led Judah in the practice of detestable sex worship, perhaps because of Ammonite influence on his mother's side of the family. 1 Kai 14. 22-24. 2ch12. 1 This, in turn, provoked Jehovah's anger, and in expression of it he raised up the king of Egypt, Shishak, who, together with his allies, overran the land and captured a number of cities in Judah in the 5th year of Hobom's reign. Had it not been that Hobom and his princes humbled themselves in repentance, not even Jerusalem would have escaped. As it was, the treasures of the temple and the king's house, including the gold shields that Solomon had made, were taken by Shishak as his booty. Hobom then replaced these shields with copper ones. 1 Kai 14. 25-28. 2ch12. 2-12. During his lifetime Hobom married 18 wives, including Mahalath the granddaughter of David, and Maacah the granddaughter of David's son Absalom. Maacah was his favorite wife and the mother of Abijah, one of his 28 sons and the heir apparent to the throne. Other members of Hobom's family included 60 concubines and 60 daughters. 2ch11. 18-22. Before his death at the age of 58, and the ascension of Abijah to the throne in 980 BCE, Hobom distributed many gifts among his other sons, presumably to prevent any revolt against Abijah after his death. 1 Kai 14. 31. 2ch11. 23. 12. 16 On the whole, Hobom's life is best summed up in this commentary. He did what was bad, for he had not firmly established his heart to search for Jehovah. 2ch12. 14. Hoboth 3 middle dot Hoboth broad places. 1. The name that Isaac gave to a well he dug. GE 26. 22 Some scholars have tentatively identified Hoboth with Rehoboth Negev, about 35 kilometers 22 miles of Beersheba. The names bear certain similarities. In naming the well, Isaac said that now God had given ample room. He and his shepherds could be fruitful without interfering with, or getting interference from, others. 2. A city of unknown location from which came Shaul, an early Edomite king. GE 36. 31, 37. 1ch1. 43, 48 In both references to it, the place is called Hoboth by the river. Prophetic and figurative use. In the scriptures, sheep often denote the defenseless, innocent, and, at times, abused people of Jehovah. 2 17. PS 44. 11, 22. 95. 7. 119. 176. Mount 10. 6, 16. Joe 21. 16, 17. Row 8. 36. Under unfaithful shepherds or leaders, the Israelites as God's sheep suffered greatly. Through his prophet Ezekiel, Jehovah presents a most pathetic picture of neglect. The flock itself you do not feed. The sickened ones you have not strengthened, and the ailing one you have not healed, and the broken one you have not bandaged, and the dispersed one you have not brought back, and the lost one you have not sought to find, but with harshness you have had them in subjection, even with tyranny. And they were gradually scattered because of there being no shepherd, so that they became food for every wild beast of the field. S 34. 3-5. By contrast, Jesus' sheep, both the little flock and the other sheep, who follow his lead, are well cared for. Luke 12. 32. Joe 10. O textoi acute miritra longo, shake 917 horns like a lamb, suggestive of a pretense of inoffensiveness. Similarly, Jesus spoke of false prophets as wolves in sheep's covering, hence dangerous, although appearing to be harmless. Mount 7. 15. The trembling of Mount Sinai at the time of Jehovah's giving the law to Israel. 19. 18 seems to be alluded to under the figure of mountains skipping about like rams. PS 114. 4-6. Compare PS 29. 5, 6. 68. 8. Wild sheep. The Hebrew word to has been variously translated wild bull kj, antelope as, and gazelle. However, Lexicon in Veteris Testamenti Libros, by Kuhler and Baumgartner Leiden, 1958, p. 1016, gives wild sheep as a possible rendering, and it is thus translated at Deuteronomy 14. 5 and Isaiah 51. 20. Wild sheep are distinguished from domestic sheep by their outer coat, which is of course hair rather than wool. The variety of wild sheep that is now geographically closest to Palestine is the Armenian wild sheep Ovis gmelini, found in the mountain ridges of Asia Minor and eastern Iran. The ram of this variety measures less than 0.9 meters, 3 feet high at the shoulder. Sheepfold. The enclosure into which the sheep were usually brought for the night to protect them from thieves and predatory animals. Although caves and other natural shelters were also used, often sheepfolds were permanent pens having stone walls. New 32. In Jehovah God knew it was necessary to save only representative members of the different kinds, since they would reproduce in variety after the flood. See Ark number 1. Following the recession of the flood waters, these comparatively few basic kinds emerged from the ark and spread out over the surface of the earth, eventually producing many variations of their kinds. Although many new varieties have come into existence since the flood, the surviving kinds have remained fixed and unchanged, in harmony with the unchangeable word of Jehovah God. Isra 55. 8-11. Kindness. The quality or state of taking an active interest in the welfare of others. Friendly and helpful acts or favors. The principal word for kindness in the Christian Greek scriptures is khre::stotes. Jehovah God takes the lead and is o textoi acute miritra longo, kindness 154 in connection with that object is realized. According to the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, chesed is active, social, and enduring. Chesed always designates not just a human attitude, but also the act that emerges from this attitude. It is an act that preserves or promotes life. It is intervention on behalf of someone suffering misfortune or distress. It is demonstration of friendship or piety. It pursues what is good and not what is evil. Edited by G. J. Butterwick and H. Ringgren, 1986, Volume 5, p. 51. Hence, chesed is more comprehensively rendered loving kindness, or, because of the fidelity, solidarity, and proved loyalty associated with it, an alternate translation would be loyal love. In the plural number it may be rendered loving kindnesses, acts of loyal love, full loving kindness, or full loyal love. PS 25. 6, FTN. Isra 55. 3, FTN. loving kindness is a precious quality of Jehovah God in which he delights, and it is manifest in all his dealings with his servants. PS 36. 7. 62. 12. Mix 7. 18. Were this not the case, they would have perished long ago. Or 3. 22. Thus, Moses could plead in behalf of rebellious Israel, both on the basis of Jehovah's great name and because he is a God of loving kindness. New 14. 13-19. The scriptures show that Jehovah's loving kindness, or loyal love, is displayed in a variety of ways and under different circumstances. In acts of deliverance and preservation PS 6. 4. 119. 88, 159, as a safeguard in protection PS 40. 11. 61. 7. 143. 12, and as a fact to bring own. Plutarchus lives Themistocles, XXVII, 1 gives the information that Thucydides and Charon of Lampsacus relate that Xerxes was dead, and that it was his son Artaxerxes with whom Themistocles had his interview. Charon was a Persian subject who lived through the change of rulership from Xerxes to Artaxerxes. From the testimonies of Thucydides and of Charon of Lampsacus, we can see that when Themistocles arrived in Persia, Artaxerxes had recently begun ruling. We can establish the time when Artaxerxes began ruling by calculating back from when Themistocles died. Not all reference books give the same date for his death. However, historian Diodorus Siculus Diodorus of Sicily, 1154, 1. 1158, 3 relates his death in an account of things that happened when Praxeurgus was a chon in Athens. Praxeurgus was a chon in Athens in 471,470 BCE. O textoi acute muritra longo, Persia, Persians 615 him, at the time of Xerxes' murder, Artaxerxes, his son, was but a child, pure a boy, which is true if Xerxes died in 475. Artaxerxes was then 16 years old, whereas in 465 he would have been 26 years old, which would not justify any more Justin's expression. According to this chronology, since Artaxerxes began to reign in 475, the 20th year of his reign proves to be in 455 and not in 445 as it is said quite commonly. Revue Apologetic, Paris, Volume 68, 1939, p. 94. If Darius died in 486 BCE and Xerxes died in 475 BCE, how could it be explained that some ancient documents allot Xerxes a reign of 21 years? It is well known that a king and his son might rule together in a double kingship, or co-regency. If this was the case with Darius and Xerxes, historians could count the years of Xerxes' reign either from the start of a co-regency with his father or from his father's death. If Xerxes ruled 10 years with his father and 11 years by himself, some sources could attribute to him 21 years of rulership, while others might give him 11 years. There is solid evidence for a co-regency of Xerxes with his father Darius. The Greek historian Herodotus 7:3 says, Darius judged his Xerxes' plea for kingship to be just and declared him king. But to my thinking Xerxes would have been made king even without this advice. This indicates that Xerxes was made king during the reign of his father Darius. Evidence from Persian sources. A co-regency of Xerxes with Darius can be seen especially from Persian bas-reliefs that have come to light. In Persepolis several bas-reliefs have been found that represent Xerxes standing behind his father's throne, dressed in clothing identical to his father's and with his head on the same level. This is unusual, since ordinarily the king's head would be higher than all others. In a new inscription of Xerxes from Persepolis was probably in the vicinity of the pool by that name in this sector of Jerusalem. Jesus mentioned that this tower collapsed, killing 18 men, an event that must have been fresh in the memory of his audience. Luke 13. 4. See also Antonia, Tower of. Figurative use. Those who look in faith and obedience to Jehovah have great security, as David sang. You Jehovah have proved to be a refuge for me, a strong tower in the face of the enemy. PS 61. 3. Those who recognize what his name stands for, and who trust in and faithfully represent that name, have nothing to fear. 4. The name of Jehovah is a strong tower. into it the righteous runs and is given protection. PI 18. 10. Compare 1 to 17. 45-47. Tower of Babel. See Babel. Town. See city. Dependent towns. Trachonitis track enitis from a gr. Root meaning rough, probably a rough area. That region which, together with Iturea, was under the administration of Philip, a Roman district ruler during the ministries of John the Baptizer and Jesus. Lu 3. 1. The northern limits of Trachonitis were some 40 kilometers 25 miles of Damascus in the northeastern part of Bashan. In size, it embraced a pear-shaped area of about 900 square kilometers 350 square mi. For the most part, exposed lava deposits with their deep fissures and holes cover the central portion of this country, leaving little land suitable for the cultivation of anything other than vineyards. It is a wild, inhospitable, and foreboding country, known today by the Arabic name Al-Layya meaning the refuge, for it affords a suitable hideout for fugitives from justice. Judging from the ruins of its ancient cities, at one time o textoi acute miritra longo, traitor 1119 way of thinking or acting. The Greek word par-ra-do-sis means, literally, a thing given beside and hence that which is transmitted by word of mouth or in writing. 1 Co 11. 2. The word as used in the Christian Greek scriptures is applied to traditions that were proper or acceptable aspects of true worship, as well as to those that were in error or were followed or viewed in a way that made them harmful and objectionable. Over the centuries the Jews acquired many traditions. These included ways of dress and handling social matters such as weddings and burials. Joe 2. 1, 2. 19. 40 Also, some aspects of Jewish worship in the 1st century CE were customary or traditional, like using wine in the Passover meal and celebrating the rededication of the temple. Lu 22. 14-18. Joe 10. 22 Jesus and his apostles did not object to such, though they knew that those things were not required by the law, who in the days of old, entered for the first time the abode of the Assyrian kings. He was ushered in through the portal guarded by the colossal lions or bulls of white alabaster. In the first hall he found himself surrounded by the sculptured records of the empire. Battles, sieges, triumphs, the exploits of the chase, the ceremonies of religion, were portrayed on the walls, sculptured in alabaster, and painted in gorgeous colors. Under each picture were engraved, in characters filled up with bright copper, inscriptions describing the scenes represented. Above the sculptures were painted other events. The king, attended by his eunuchs and warriors, receiving his prisoners, entering into alliances with other monarchs, or performing some sacred duty. These representations were enclosed in colored borders, of elaborate and elegant design. The emblematic tree, winged bulls, and monstrous animals, were conspicuous amongst the ornaments. At the upper end of the hall was the colossal figure of the king in adoration before the supreme deity, receiving from his eunuch the holy cup. He was attended by warriors bearing his arms, and by the priests or presiding divinities. His robes, and those of his followers, were adorned with groups of figures, animals, and flowers, all painted with brilliant colors. The stranger trod upon alabaster slabs, each bearing an inscription, recording the titles, genealogy, and achievements of the great king. Several doorways, formed by gigantic winged lions or bulls, or by the figures of guardian deities, lead into other apartments, which again opened into more distant halls. In each were new sculptures. On the walls of some were processions of colossal figures. Armed men and eunuchs following the king, warriors laden with spoil, leading prisoners, or bearing presents and offerings to the gods. On the walls of others were portrayed the winged priests, or presiding divinities, standing before the sacred trees. The ceilings above him were divided into square compartments, painted with flowers, or with the figures of animals. Some were inlaid with ivory, each compartment being surrounded by elegant borders and mouldings. The beams, as well as the sides of the chambers, may have been gilded, or even plated, with gold and silver. And the rarest woods, in which the cedar was conspicuous, were used for the woodwork. Square openings in the ceilings of the chambers admitted the light of day. Nineveh and its Remains, 1856, Part 2, pages 207-209. in the time of Jonah. Jehovah's prophet Jonah, in the 9th century BCE, declared impending doom for Nineveh because of the wickedness of its inhabitants. However, since the people, including the king, repented, Jehovah spared the city. John 1. 1, 2, 3, 2, 5-10. At that time Nineveh was a great city, with a walking distance of 3 days. John 3. 14. 7. However, zoologist Hubert Hendricks, in observing rock badgers at the Hellerbrunn Zoological Gardens near Munich, Germany, noticed that these creatures made peculiar chewing and swallowing movements. He found that rock badgers actually do chew the cud from 25 to 50 minutes a day, usually during the night. The German newspaper Stuttgarter Zeitung of March 12, 1966, commented on the discovery. Although this fact was previously unknown to accepted zoology, it is not new. In the 11th chapter of Leviticus, you can find it. The claim has also been made that the hoof toes of the rock badger are doubly cloven. However, it could hardly be said that the rock badger's front feet, each having 4 toes terminating in hoof-like endings, and the hind feet, each equipped with 3 toes and a corresponding number of miniature hoofs or nails, resembled the foot member of a splitter of the hoof such as a cow. The scriptures speak of the instinctive wisdom of this little creature. Although not mighty, the rock badger makes up for its seeming defenselessness by dwelling in inaccessible rocky places. PS 104. 18. PR 30. 26. Rock mass. This translates the Greek word petra feminine gender, which designates a mass of rock. Mount 7. 24, 25. 27. 51, 60. Lu 6. 48. 8. 6, 13. Re 6. 15, 16, and therefore differs from Petro's masculine gender and employed as a proper name, Peter, meaning piece of rock. This distinction makes it clear that, when saying to Peter, "You are Peter, and on this rock mass I will build my congregation," Jesus was not using synonymous terms. Mount 16. 18. Even in the Aramaic Syriac version the distinction is apparent from a difference in the gender of the particle preceding the word kaifa, used for both Peter and rock. The masculine verbal pronoun who precedes Peter, but rock is preceded by the feminine demonstrative adjective heid. That the apostles did not understand Jesus' statement to signify that Peter was the rock mass is evident from the fact that they later disputed about who seemed to be the greatest among them. Mr. 9. 33-35. Lu 22. 24-26. There would have been no text to acute miritra longo. Rod, staff 817 at one time believed that Peter was the rock mass but later changed his view. Lang's Commentary on the Holy Scriptures, Mount 16. 18, FTN, p. 296 quotes Augustine as saying, "The rock is not so named from Peter, but Peter from the rock non anima Petra, said Petrus a Petra, even as Christ is not so called after the Christian, but the Christian after Christ." And there are eunuchs that have made themselves eunuchs on account of the kingdom of the heavens. Let him that can make room for it make room for it. Mount 19. 10-12. Singleness, then, is a gift having as its basic advantage the freedom afforded the possessor. Jesus here used figurative language. Men make room for it, not by literal self-emasculation, but in their hearts, by willingly resolving to keep themselves physically in the unmarried state, whether for a lifetime or for a more limited period of time, maintaining this status by self-control. The teaching and practice of compulsory celibacy by certain religious sects, however, finds no support in Scripture. On the contrary, it is written, in later periods of time some will fall away from the faith. Forbidding to marry. 1-4. 1-3. Notably, many or most of the apostles were married men. 1 Co 9. 5. What keeps those with the gift of singleness from marrying need not be a vow of celibacy, but their desire and ability to apply themselves to the service of God in the single state. Shinim, land of Sinim. A country from which, it was foretold, scattered Israelites would come when the time arrived for them to dwell in and rehabilitate their homeland. Isra 49. 12 reference to the N and W in the same verse suggests that Shinim was Esori of the land of Israel. Instead of Shinim, the Greek Septuagint reads land of the Persians, which could include Elam, called Sinim in Old Akkadian. Compare Isra 11. 11. The Targums in the Latin Vulgate, on the other hand, read land to the south. Certain scholars have suggested identification with Sin as 30. 6 in the southern extremity of Egypt. But Shinim's location is uncertain. Shinat Semite, a branch of Canaan's descendants, and one of the 70 post-flood families. GE 10. 15, 17. 1 ch1. 15 Several Lebanese locations of similar name are noted in various ancient writings, but the exact place where the Shinats settled remains uncertain. Sin offering. See offerings. Shorn Sion Excellency. Another, perhaps older, name for Mount Hermon. De 4. 48 Shorn not Zion, like the Amorite name Seir, may have designated a particular part of Mount Hermon. Compare to 3. 9. 1 ch 5. 23. K 4. 8. See Hermon. Sipmoth. A Judean city to which David sent a gift blessing of the spoils of his victory over the Amalekites. While a fugitive, he and his men had free access to the city. 1 to 30. These indicate what situation he will bring about when his will takes place on earth. He said of his people, they will certainly build houses and have occupancy. And they will certainly plant vineyards and eat their fruitage. They will not build and someone else have occupancy. They will not plant and someone else do the eating. And they will actually sit, each one under his vine and under his fig tree, and there will be no one making them tremble. Issa 65. 21, 22. Mik 4. 4. See people of the land earth. Language. Any means, vocal or other, by which feelings or thoughts are expressed or communicated. Generally, however, language means a body of words and the methods of combining these is understood by a community of people. The Hebrew and Greek words for tongue signify language. J 5. 15, FTN. Act 2. 11, int the Hebrew term for lip is used in a similar way. GE 11. 1, FTN. Language, of course, is most intimately associated with the mind, which employs the speech organs, throat, tongue, lips, and teeth, as its instruments. See tongue. Thus, the Encyclopaedia Britannica 1959 edition states, thinking and words go together. For thinking, to be clear, has to rely upon names or nouns and their various associations with one another. While some minor reservations are justifiable, there is an overwhelming mass of evidence that fortifies the contention stated above. No words, no thinking. Volume 5, p. 740 words are man's principal means of receiving, storing, manipulating, and transmitting information. Origin of speech. The first human, Adam, was created with a vocabulary, as well as with the ability to coin new words and thus expand his vocabulary. Without a God-given vocabulary, the newly created man would have been no more able to comprehend verbal instructions from his creator than were the unreasoning animals. GE 1. 27-30. 2. 16-20. Compare to PE 2. 12. Jude 10. So, while only intelligent man of all earth's creatures has the ability of true speech, language did not originate with man, but with man's all-wise creator, Jehovah God. Compare X 4. 11, 12. On the origin of language, the well-known lexicographer Ludwig Kuhler wrote, there has been, especially in former times, much speculation as to how human speech came into being. Writers strove to explore animal language. For animals also in the Red Sea, the people of Israel began to fear Jehovah and to put faith in Jehovah and in Moses his servant. X 14. 31. Establishing the Law Covenant. Before establishing the Law Covenant with Israel, Jehovah performed miracles, providing water and food for the millions now in the desert region of Sinai and giving victory over attackers. X 15. 22-25. 16. 11-15. 17. 5-16 At the place previously appointed, Mount Sinai, Jehovah gave an awe-inspiring demonstration of his control over the created earthly forces. X 19. 16-19. Compare Heb 12. 18-21. The nation had every reason to recognize the divine source of the covenant and accept its terms with deep respect. De 4. 32-36, 39 Jehovah's remarkable use of Moses also gave real basis for people to accept with conviction the Pentateuch, the initial part of the sacred scriptures written by Moses' hand, as divinely inspired. Compare to 34. 10-12. Jos 1. 7, 8. When the authority of the Aaronic priesthood was questioned, Jehovah gave further visible confirmation. New chapter 16, 17. Conquest of Canaan. The conquest of 7 nations of Canaan, more populous and mighty than Israel to 7. 1, 2, gave added testimony to Jehovah's Godship. Jos 23. 3, 8-11 His fame paved the way. X 9. 16. J 32. 20, 21, and dread and the fear of Israel as his people weakened their opposers. J 11. 25. X 15. 14-17 Those opposing were all the more reprehensible therefore, for they had evidence that these were the people of the true God. To fight them was to fight against God. Some Canaanites wisely recognized Jehovah's superiority over their idol gods, as had O textoi acute miritra longo, powerful works 663 under the Israelite monarchy. During the 510 years of the Israelite monarchy, Jehovah's mighty arm and protecting hand frequently kept powerful aggressors at bay, confused and disrupted their forces, and sent them fleeing back to their home territories. These nations worshipped not only nature gods, but gods and goddesses of war. In some cases the head of the country was himself viewed as a god. Since they insisted on warring against his people, Jehovah showed himself again as a manly person of war, a glorious king, mighty in battle. X 15. 3. PS 24. 7-10. Isra 59. 17, 13. 4. 18. 9. Honesty, and O textoi acute miritra longo. World 1205-13, 14 God will also deal with each person according to that one's work. PS 62. 12 This and especially love for Jehovah God are good reasons for shunning improper works and doing works that are pleasing in his sight. 1 Joe 5. 3. PS 34. 14. 97. 10. Am 5. 14, 15. To experience divine favor, Christians must avoid the works of the flesh, which include such things as fornication, loose conduct, idolatry, practice of spiritism, hatreds, fits of anger, and drunken bouts. Such practices would bar one from inheriting God's kingdom and are evidently included among the unfruitful works that belong to the darkness, works that result in no benefit. F5. 19-21. F5. 3-14. 1 PE4. 3. Compare Joe 3. 20, 21. Proper works. Dependence upon Jehovah God is essential if one's works are to succeed. PS 127. 1. PR 16. 3 It is God who backs up and strengthens those who work at doing his will. 2 Co 4. 7. PHP 4. 13 Whereas the lives of humans abound with vain works EC 2. 10, 11, works relating to true worship are not in vain. Hebrew Christians were given the assurance. God is not unrighteous, so as to forget your work and the love you showed for his name, in that you have ministered to the holy ones and continue ministering. Hope 6. 10 Such work evidently included rendering material assistance or other kindnesses to those in need or to those experiencing suffering and persecution. Compare F4. 28. PHP 4. 14-19. 1T6. 17, 18. Chas 1. 27. Other fine works include sharing in making disciples Mount 28. 19, 20. 1 Co 3. 9-15 and, in the case of men, serving as an overseer in a Christian congregation and teaching fellow believers. 1Th 5. 12, 13. 1T3. 1. 5. 17. Faith and works. Works of the Mosaic Law, which included such things as sacrificial offerings, purifications, and circumcision, did not make a person righteous. Row 3. 20. 4. 1-10. Death is the wages of sin, and as the last enemy, death is to be brought to nothing through Christ's kingdom rule. Row 6. 23. 1 Co 15. 25, 26, 56 For obedient mankind this means a return to the perfect state enjoyed by man at the beginning of human history in Eden. Thus, humans will be able to enjoy not only perfection as to faith and love but perfection as to sinlessness. They will measure up fully and faultlessly to God's righteous standards for humans. The prophecy at Revelation 21. 1-5 likewise relates to the 1,000-year reign of Christ, since the New Jerusalem, whose coming down out of heaven is linked with the removal of mankind's afflictions, is shown to be Christ's bride, or glorified congregation, hence those composing the royal priesthood of Christ's millennial rule. Re 21. 9, 10. F5. 25-32. 1 PE 2. 9. Re 20. 4-6. Mankind's perfection will be relative, limited to the human sphere. Yet it will certainly afford those gaining it the ability to enjoy earthly life to the fullest degree possible. Rejoicing to satisfaction to the full is with Jehovah's face, and God's tenting with mankind shows that obedient mankind is meant, those toward whom Jehovah's face turns with approval. PS 16. 11. Re 21. 3. Compare PS 15. 1-3. 27. 4, 5. 61. 4. Issa 66. 23. Perfection does not mean an end to variety, however, as persons often assume. The animal kingdom, which is the product of Jehovah's perfect activity G1. 20-24. The 32. 4, contains enormous variety. Perfection of the planet Earth is likewise not incompatible with variety, change, or contrast. It allows for the simple and the complex, the plain and the fancy, the sour and the sweet, the rough and the smooth, the meadows and the woods, the mountains and the valleys. It embraces the stimulating freshness of early spring, the warmth of summer with its azure blue skies, the loveliness of autumn colors, the pure beauty of freshly fallen snow. G8. 22 Perfect humans will thus not be stereotypes of identical personality, talents, and abilities. As the initial definitions have shown, this is not a necessary meaning of perfection. Perfume. See ointment and perfumes. Perga. A prominent city in the Roman province of Pamphylia. The ruins of ancient Perga are believed to be near the modern village of Murtana, about 13 kilometers 8 mi inland from the east coast of Asia Minor and some 8 kilometers 5 mi w of the Sestraslakshu River. It appears. 17. Shammoth. One of David's mighty men. A Hararite. 1 Ch 11. 26, 27. See Shamano. 4. Shamuasham middle.mu are a shortened form of Shemaiah, meaning Jehovah has heard listened. 1. The chieftain representing the tribe of Reuben whom Moses sent into the promised land as a spy. Son of Zakur. He joined 9 other spies in discouraging the Israelites from having faith that Jehovah would clear Canaan of their enemies. New 13. 2-4, 28, 29. 2. A son of David among those born by Bathsheba, therefore a full brother of King Solomon. 2 5. 13, 14. 1ch14. 3, for he is once called Shemaiah. 1ch3. 5. 3. Elvite of the line of Jeduthun, whose son or descendant Abda lived o textoi acute muritra longo. Shaphem 910 referred to, usually with reference to animals prepared for sacrifice. The 1. 9, 13. 4. 11, 12. 8. 21. 9. 14. The Hebrew term rendered shaks is once used for the leaper legs of wind-swarming creatures. La 11. 21 at Amos 3. 12. Jehovah's prophet uses the figure of a shepherd snatching two shanks away from the mouth of a lion, evidently to exonerate himself from responsibility for the loss of one of his herd. Here the prophet graphically portrays the destruction coming upon Samaria, particularly the leaders thereof. There would be very few who would escape the like devouring by Samaria's enemies. Shaphem. The second in charge of the tribe of Gad in Bashan sometime prior to the reign of Jeroboam II in the 9th century BCE 1ch5. 11, 12, 17. Shaphan Rockbadger, son of Azaliah and a royal secretary. King Josiah, in 642 BCE sent Shaphan and two other officials to high priest Hilkiah with instructions for temple repairs. On this occasion Hilkiah turned over to Shaphan the very book of the Lord, likely even the original, that had recently been found in the temple. No sooner had Shaphan read a portion of the law to Josiah than he and his son Achim, along with others, were dispatched by Josiah as a delegation to inquire concerning Jehovah's purpose for Judah. They went to the prophetess Huldah and reported back to the king Jehovah's prophecy that destruction would come, but not during Josiah's reign. 2 Chi 22. 3-20. 2ch 34. 8-28. Shaphan's son Zechariah 26. 24, Elasijah 29. 1-3, 1-33. 3. Daughter o textoi acute muritra longo, Tamarisk 1064 city, one that is commonly identified with Palmyra. See Tadmor. Tamarisk Hebrew, Eshel. The tamarisk grows as a tree or shrub. Though its trunk is gnarled, the branches are often band-like, giving the tree a feathery appearance. The evergreen leaves are tiny, scale-like, and pressed close to the branches, so they lose very little moisture by transpiration, enabling the trees to live in desert regions and even on sand dunes. In spring the tree blossoms with spikes of tiny pink or white flowers, which give welcome color to otherwise barren regions. Salt-loving tamarisks will often grow very near the ocean and on salt marshes. Abundant tamarisks along the banks of the Jordan form jungle-like thickets that are the habitat of wild animals, and in Bible times they may have helped compose the proud thickets along the Jordan, where lions once found cover. Jah 49. 19. Zech 11. 3. Though the tamarisk is generally of relatively low height, one kind of tamarisk tree, Tamarixophylla, sometimes grows to a height of 18 meters, 60 feet. Abraham is recorded as having planted a tamarisk at Beersheba Ge 21. 33. King Saul sat in the shade of a tamarisk at Gibeah 1 22. 6. And his bones and those of his sons were buried under a large tamarisk tree in Jabesh Gilead. 1 31. 13. Compare 1ch 10. 12, where the Hebrew word for big tree middle.la is used. Dr. Joseph Weitz, a noted authority on reforestation in Israel, said, "The first tree Abraham put in the soil of Beersheba was a tamarisk. Following his lead, 4 years ago we put out 2 million in the same area." Abraham was right. The tamarisk is one of the few trees we have found that thrives in the south where yearly rainfall is less than 6 inches. The Reader's Digest, March 1954, p. 30. Another type of tamarisk, Tamarix manifera, when pierced by a scale insect, exudes drops of honey-like sap that are gathered and sold to pilgrims in some places as manna. This has no relation, however, to the manna provided for Israel in the wilderness, since such true manna was miraculously provided and gathered from the ground. Acts 16. 13-15. Tambourine. A percussion instrument used since patriarchal times. The Hebrew word tof has also been translated timbrel, temple, and tabret. GE 31. 27, kx, da, as all these renderings essentially are descriptive of the same instrument. A small hand drum of animal skin or parchment stretched on one or both sides of a wooden or metal frame, likely about 25 cm 10 inches.